Hi, everyone. Thank you for checking out this week's episode. I wanted to jump on and offer a small reminder of the ways that you can connect with us. The first way is our socials. So we are Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram and Natalie K124 on TikTok, my personal Instagram. And you can find us on YouTube and Pinterest under To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. The second way is by becoming a Patreon member. We are well on our way to our 25 member Patreon, where we are going to unlock bonus perks to being a patron member. Shout out to all of our existing patrons. As an independently ran and funded podcast, your support means everything. Another way that you can connect with us is making sure to subscribe and leave comments wherever you can so we can start reading reviews on each podcast episode. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to check out the merch store, and we will see you next week. Hey, tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Today, my guests are from the podcast Flirty, Dirty, and Dying. Clarissa and Kourtney are here today to help me dive into what relationships are like in our 30s and how we've had some mind shifts about life, love, and death when we left our 20s. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, so tell our listeners about your show. We kind of already talked about how it's built around the lie that Jennifer Garner gave us about being able to be flirty and thriving in our 30s, but how did your show come to be?
Well, we've been friends for like almost 15 years probably at this point, and we're around the same age. I'm technically not 30 yet, but I'm getting real close, and I feel like I'm 50. And Kourtney recently got into her 30s.
Yep, I'm 31. I'll be 32 this year, and it's just going downhill from there, you know?
But we kind of had been friends for a very long time, and we lived in different places and, did the whole raging 20s thing, and then moved back to the same place. And when we started kind of like talking and connecting more again, we realized like, oh, things are just like a wreck, aren't they? For both of us. And just from there, the podcast was born. A few conversations and like, oh, we're in a very similar place now. So
let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great because I feel like everyone lies to us about aging. And like, my sister just had a baby 2 weeks ago and she wasn't able to get into birthing classes because they were all full. And I went, oh no, that's the only time that they're honest to us about like giving birth, because they know that we're already like screwed and there's no chance that we're not going to have the baby. We've already committed.
It's
and now
too late.
Right. It's too late. And now they can be like, oh, it's terrible, actually, just so you know.
No, really. It's like there's so many things that we get from like media or just like people not telling us the full truth when we're younger and idealistic.
It's going to be the best days of your life.
Yeah.
You're a liar.
I haven't had those yet.
I haven't had a best day.
I'm pretty sure I even didn't have like a best day in my 20s. I'm pretty sure that Millenials got this beautiful package of it's just going to be hard, okay? Yeah, and then friends like lied to us. It was like, you're just going to spend every day and every evening in a coffee shop talking about the sex that you had over the weekend. Also, haven't had that.
It wasn't always great either.
No. Nothing I want to like talk about in a public place.
Right, in a public place. I love this whole idea of just crafting a show around the fact that, damn it, I've been baited. Because that's how To All the Men I've Tolerated Before came to be too. Because I was like, damn it, I was told that I would just go to sleep and then some guy with money and good looks would kiss me and then I would be set. And that is not how dating has been for me.
No, and if it was, that would be like a crime.
Right. Also that.
Problematic.
Right. If it was, it's an SVU episode, and Disney baited and tricked me, and I'm irritated about it.
No, we feel that.
I also love this paradox of like when we were children, we looked at people in their 30s like they were, in fact, 80. And we're like, look at those old people with jobs and responsibilities. And now we're the old people with jobs and responsibilities. And I still look around this house going, why do they let me live here by myself?
Yeah, I was literally talking to my husband. I'm like, do you ever just sit and think, wow, this is my house? I pay bills and like I'm married. It just feels wrong.
I constantly have to like qualify the fact that I'm an adult to be like, well, I live by myself and I'm only responsible for myself and the cat. And she truly like spends hours of her day actively ignoring me. So
That's their favorite thing. No, I mean, it's just, it feels like a daily conversation almost. I mean, my partner and I, we literally had a conversation last night about like, money and how things aren't really like
Great.
going so hot and what do we do? And he literally just said, well, maybe we're just not like doing this grown up thing right. I was like, well, I know, I made a whole show about it with Kourtney. But it does, it feels like it's an invasive feeling in like all of our minds. Like
imposter syndrome.
Yeah. It's like imposter syndrome for being a grown up.
yeah.
Like, we still say grown up, which should probably not adult.
Yeah,
adult.
We're not grown ups.
No.
The other day, I said something along the lines of, well, when I grow up, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm already here. Fuck, that sucks.
Yeah.
But I also have this weird paradox in my head where for the last 5 years, all I've wanted to be is like a sea hag on an isolated cliff away from the general public to where I can just be like my normal level of fuckery and no one gets to say anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that one because, like, I loved and hated quarantine at the same time because
I want to go back.
I'm like a shut-in, and I always kind of have been, but the quarantine years really made me reach my final form of shut-in, and now it's like I don't want to be bothered with anything and anyone, so I feel like an old hermit, but I also feel like a child. There's like not an in-between.
And I think that's also what changed for me when I turned 30. When people are like, are you nervous about turning 30? And I went, no, I can't wait to wake up on my 30th birthday and just stop giving a fuck about all of you and what you think about my life and my life choices because it's too late. I'm 30. This is just who I am now.
Yeah, it's set.
On the eve of turning 30 or as you turn 30, were there any like misconceptions you had about what turning 30 would be like?
I had zero expectation. But that's also because I found out I had Crohn's disease prior to turning 30, so I had already spiraled.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, well, this is my life now, and this is just how it's going to be. So 30 was just like, oh, here we go. This is just what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had, like I said, I'm technically still in my latest 20s. I'm running out of the late 20s. But I feel like I've just mentally skipped ahead. Like, I don't know if I'll have a breakdown on the day I turn 30. I kind of hope so. But I think I've just mentally skipped ahead because I don't feel like I'm in my, like, fun 20s anymore. I don't think I ever did. I just feel like I'm already 30, so I've just embraced it, like, a year ahead of time. So I guess I'll get back to you on that one.
Oh, please do. And I would love for you to have a meltdown too, because wouldn't it be a luxury to just get to feel something about anything that was happening to us?
A good cry is always therapeutic.
I would just like to start feeling again instead of waking up and being like, oh, the state of our world and our lives is completely normal.
Yeah, feeling. That would be nice.
Wouldn't that be something? I also feel like the years 28 and 29 just feel like your senior year of high school all over again, where you're
That's
just
what
like,
it is. I have like senioritis, but for being 30. Like, I've already accepted it. There's nothing I can do. If the world doesn't end, which
fingers
who knows,
crossed,
then it's gonna happen, and I'm already mentally there, so I just might as well not.
She spends too much time with me, so she's there with me.
Yeah.
I also feel like there's this like lie in our 20s where it's like our 20s are where we really like learn who we truly are and who we want to be as a person. And I feel like that's just like capitalist propaganda because they make us pick our job path at 18. And then they're like, and now's your chance to practice how to be a good little drone.
I kind of fell into where like what I do. I had no plans of that. So like when I chose what I wanted to be when I grew up, it wasn't actually what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I just kind of fell into what I'm doing, and I've just been doing.
Yeah, I definitely get that feeling. Like I had a lot of that. Like I had the career path, and this is what I'm going to do. I used to be a journalist, and then I picked a career path, like a lot of people, that will just like was supposed to consume my entire life and then completely burnt me out by the time I was 25. So then by the time I'm getting to like 30, I'm like, I still have no idea what I'm going to do or what I'm supposed to do because I knew I couldn't do that anymore. So it's like I'm starting over in a lot of ways. And the pandemic made a lot of people have to start over. And I don't know. I feel like I figured a few things out in my 20s about who I am, but it wasn't out of like having a lot of fun, flirty, amazing experiences. It was like trauma and pain. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. So I did it, but I don't know, it was not what we were told, which I think is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think the whole like rom-com of it all where it's like, well, it'll just be Clueless and then you'll date your stepbrother because he's around is like a completely false narrative. Instead, it feels like our lives are like a film that's trying really hard to get an Oscar. So it's just like throwing every sad thing at us. Like, well, what if there was a terrorist attack in the middle of you being in high school? What if there was a worldwide pandemic right around the time you thought that life was starting to even out? It's just like, I give the millennials their Oscar so we can give a speech already and then just kind of like thrive under that and let's rest a little.
Yeah, I'm ready to make low budget comedies again. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want my artsy stuff anymore.
Right. I'm ready for my Netflix Christmas movie. I would like to make my Netflix Christmas movie come back, please.
Yeah, I wanna be a successful businesswoman from the city, and I'm gonna come down to my hometown and fall in love with a boy. And
Right.
That's what I want to do.
A boy in flannel who may or may not have read a book in the past year. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. What a scholar.
I was also checking out your show and you did an entire episode about online dating. And I have such a beef to pick with the fact that like we didn't get to date normally. We had to shop on Amazon for partners. And to me, it doesn't work out.
I have a different view of that just because I grew up in the same area. I was around the same people all the time. I was dating within those same people and it wasn't working out. So online dating was the only way I was able to branch out and find people outside of my small little town circle. And now I'm married. So it actually kind of worked for me.
Yeah, I think it can be like a double-edged sword, which is kind of like what we were trying to say on the episode. Like, I mean, I had some normal dating, but I feel like, and maybe this is what you mean, like, when it comes to finding like a real adult relationship, that was kind of like, it seems like it was the only option. Because by the time we all got there, it was the apps. And that's what it was. So, I mean, like, yeah, I met people in person. What a shock in like college and dated them, and it went terrible. But then by the time I was like, I'd like to find someone who's actually like a real person, I had to start online shopping. And, you know, it worked out for me, but it's also a lot.
It can also be really dangerous.
Yeah.
I feel like Clarissa and I actually did get pretty lucky with the people we have found. But that's not always the case, and it can be dangerous sometimes to talk to people online or, shop on Amazon.
Yeah, you never know what's coming in.
No, I'm so happy that you both had a really great experience with it. I've had one date where I called my friend on the way home to be like, I would just like to talk to you as I take an extremely long route home with lots of twists and turns because I tried to not let my date see what my car looked like. And then against all of my efforts, he now knows what my car looks like, and I don't want him to follow me home. And we had an entire safety episode on our second season finale about all of the mind games that women have to play just to go to the grocery store if it's after 6 p.m. And I think that the thing with online dating for me is here the two of you are in very long term committed relationships. And I'm over here like, I don't know, every time I talk to someone, it's like someone who's 44 years old and is like, I don't know, I'm just like really trying to play it loose while I find myself.
At 44.
Well, yeah, because men don't age quickly.
That's what we were always told, and I feel like that's just the biggest hawk of BS. Like, oh, well, girls mature faster than boys, and it's like, that's just, they're like priming you to take a lot of BS from men.
Yeah.
With that. And it relays into the whole dating thing, especially the online dating. Like, the things that we're like, well, maybe that's okay. Maybe we can put up with that. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a pain. I don't miss it one bit.
And then when I was about 27, I was like handed, I don't even think I would have noticed that 27 would have been my countdown time to be like, you're either going to be married or you're going to be a crone who lives by herself forever. And in a very like Victorian Renaissance manner, except for when I became 27 and it was very clear that there was no one around me who was going to marry me. Like the chances were slim because I had no partner in my life. The older adults, the boomers and the Gen Xers in my life would just like look at me and be like, don't worry, we know it'll happen for you too. And some people get married in their 20s and then they actually find a really great partner in their 40s. So maybe that's what you're looking for. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you.
I feel like just media and everything makes it seem like you have to be married in your early 20s. Like, if you're not married in your early 20s, then you are not successful in your life. And I think that's bullshit. Like, why is that? Like, we've barely lived. Like, we don't know who we are. We're still growing. Like, it took me until kind of recently to really figure out who I am. And how are you supposed to find someone you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with without even knowing who you are? And I think that's just bullshit. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to find someone when you're 30s or even 40s, because at least you know who you are and you know exactly what you deserve.
Well, and scientifically, your brain isn't fused until you're 25 or 26. Like, your brain isn't done developing and being like, this is the brain that you'll end the rest of your life with until you're 26 or 27. And then there's the whole birth control skews who you're attracted to and what kind of pheromones turn you on and everything. So there's all of these factors that go into actually picking a life partner. And then they're like, if you don't leave college with a life partner, we just don't know what you'll do. Please enjoy shopping on Bumble for someone who might murder you, ghost you, or take you out on 3 dates before deciding that they don't want to marry you.
No, I think I definitely fell into the, like, you have to leave college with a partner thing. Like, I had a couple of relationships in college that I was like, I don't even think I liked them, but I just, it's like you get into a certain comfort level and then it's like, well, I guess this is just who I have to be with because, like, I'm going to be out of college soon, and if I'm not engaged at least, then I'm a failure. And, that didn't happen. Thank God. Every day I'm like, thank God I didn't. Because, like, I would be divorced or something else probably if that worked out. But we didn't hear a lot of those other kinds of stories of like, no, go out and do your thing. Find someone when you find them. or not. That's fine too. Like, whatever. If for some reason, we've said this on the show 1,000 times, if my relationship with my partner does not work out, or he dies or something, I'm out the game.
Same.
I'm not doing this again. I'm so happy to be a spinster. I'm ready.
No, and I get that because we've all but made dating has almost become a second part-time job where it's like there's a lot of upkeep to it. You have to be talking to multiple people on apps. You have to also, I think that personally for me, the people that I've tried to date within our generation, the millennial generation, have almost just been scared away so hard from commitment where it's like, well, we don't have to, so why would we? And it's like, well, that's great, but you also just want to continue to juggle 13 people every week. That sounds exhausting to me.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting just focusing on one person.
Yeah.
Like, Mike gets so mad at me when I don't text him back. I just don't want to. I'm sorry.
You couldn't maintain
I could not. I could never maintain
a Rolodex of men.
Absolutely not.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't do it then. I was terrible at it. That's why I was like, when I saw one glimmer of hope, I was like, I'm out. If this one doesn't work out, I'm done. And it worked out against all the odds.
I love the phrase "against all the odds."
Well, it really was. I was really bad at it, I'm telling you.
Then there's the whole thing where I feel like as millennials, so much has opened up about sexuality and sexual identities and everything. And we're the people who get to watch all of that happen. But we still have this imposter syndrome where it's like, well, am I allowed to do that? I'm 30. Like, I'm 30. Shouldn't my excavation phase of my life be over by now? And I feel like that's a myth that is also perpetuated, where it's like, once you turn 30, everything you like is what you like, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, like, there's so much, life changes all the time. Life is made up of all these seasons, and people, it's not even so much changing, it's just like you get to be exposed to new things. You know, you get to learn about new people, and, you know, I get that narrative. We've heard it our whole lives, right? Like, oh, well, you're just going to settle down and get your picket fence and have all your stuff figured out. And, like, I don't think that's going to happen for any of us. Even the ones who are like, I've got it all figured out. Wait a year.
You don't.
Wait one more year, Beth.
It's going to change.
It's going to get weird. It's just always going to get a little weird. That's life. And I think that if that means you get to find a new part of your, you know, preferences or your sexual orientation or your identity in any way, then that's great. And that's something that should be embraced no matter how old you are, no matter how you kind of begin to explore it. I think it's a good thing, and I hope that continues to shift in the positive.
Yeah, because age shouldn't matter if you're just growing. Knowing who you are and growing as a person are two different things. You can know exactly who you are, but you can still grow and find different things that you enjoy, and that can be people of different genders and sexualities, or it can be things that you've never considered before.
Yeah, I think that you know, sexuality and gender, but especially sexuality, just in my perspective, very fluid. You know, it's a very fluid thing, and even just when it comes to, even if you're still whatever your sexual identity is, like if you still consider yourself heterosexual, your taste in men or women or whoever can change drastically over the years. Like the kind of guys I dated when I was in college and the kind of guy that I ended up with could not be more different. So I feel like it's a similar dynamic. Everything can be very fluid and should be.
Well, and I think about Little More on Me. Do you ever think about Little More on You, 18 years old, and being told that you're an adult? And I'm like, little 18 More on Me, who didn't know anything about herself, let alone the world, was like, I'll go to school for teaching. Teaching is the best career if I want to be a mommy. Some man will make money for me so I can be a mommy. And then I will just bounce out of the whole job field to be a mommy to some little person. And then now I'm 34 and I'm like, I don't want to be married because then you have to put people on your paperwork. and you can't always trust everyone to be on your paperwork. And I don't want kids, because I have all of these hobbies and all of these things that are really expensive. And I can't do those expensive things while also supporting myself, a child, and a partner. So I've just dipped. I've dipped out of the entire ideal life I built myself, and then built my college education around when I was 18 years old and ignorant.
Are we the same person? Because I have talked on our podcast before, but I was just like, all I want to do when I grow up is be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I wanted to do. And now I never want a child. Absolutely not. I like to travel. I like to go on cruises. I don't make enough money for myself, for one.
Yeah.
And I could not be responsible for another human being. Absolutely not.
And I think one of the biggest tools that the patriarchy and capitalism and the other oppressive systems that we currently dirty die under is everything is made to feel so permanent. It's like, well, you went to college for this and you have to be making money every day. So why would you ever explore other job opportunities? You have student loans that are tens of thousands of dollars. You have bills that you have to pay. There's this idea that if you do need help, or you are still living from home or whatever, which I think the course on this is also starting to change with Gen Z and whatnot, because it's like, no, we can't sustain ourselves in the economy that you guys have built and then ruined. So we have to stay at home longer. But I remember being fresh out of college, applying for jobs every day, and then just like sobbing because it felt like my dad was just like waiting for the opportunity that I would get to like pack up my stuff and go. And I'm like, I don't know how to feed myself on a part-time seasonal job at JC Penney's. I don't know how to do it.
No, yeah, I think we definitely have had a lot of us have had that experience, right? Like I remember when I was in college, I left home and I didn't go back for a while for a lot of reasons, but it was part of that like, well, I'm on my own now. I'm 18, I have to be out of my house. And I moved in with a guy and that didn't work out. And I remember having to go back to my mom's, and I felt like such a failure because I had to go back and live with my mom. I lived with my mom for like 6 weeks until I got an apartment. But it felt so like you failed, you didn't do this, because everything was so permanent and like this is what you have to do, just like you said. And I think we've had a lot of those kinds of experiences growing up as millennials. Like the experience that we were supposed to have, or we were told life was going to be like, has not been anything like what we've had. And I think if anybody else from previous generations is honest, it wasn't for them either. But the road has gotten so much harder because of the economy and because of changes in social norms, and it's just been like an ever evolving thing to navigate. And it feels like we're doing something wrong because we're not falling into those roles that we've been told we should fall into all these years.
And I feel, especially because I'm trying to build a career that's out of a creative field like podcasting or other avenues from the stuff that I practice podcasting, we have built an economy and a society where it's like we feel very entitled. We feel very entitled that every Thursday, Grey's Anatomy is going to play on ABC pretty much until we die at this point. And on Friday, it will be on Hulu. And should that change, I'm going to literally throw a fit. I'm going to call Hulu and like ruin some person's day who's making $15 an hour. And I feel like with the creative arts, everyone feels very entitled to being entertained. We saw that during the quarantine. And then, but no one wants to pay for it because it's like, well, shouldn't there just be joy in the world? And it's like, well, yeah, but with joy, you have to realize that the things that take away from our joy are the fact that everyone has to pay for food. You don't just get food because you happen to have the misfortune of being born.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like we're relatively new into the podcasting thing. Like we started less than a year ago. And ideally, we would love to make it like our full-time gig. We would love to be podcasting and putting all our time and all our effort and any investment that we can into this show. However, we have to like feed ourselves and pay for rent and keep lights on. And, we have to do multiple things. We have to stretch ourselves kind of thin. And we're also trying to do this new thing that Gen Z told us about, which is work-life balance. And so it's like we're trying to do all these things, and people want to have like the highest quality of everything right away all the time. But people are doing a lot of different things, and we can't be 100% all the time creative unless we're paid.
Right.
Like, unless we make money off of the show at some point, we can't like devote everything to it and make it as great as we would love to. We're doing our best, but I think as a generation, we're stretched pretty thin, especially those of us who are like, I want to do something different. I want to do something creative. I want to get off the hamster wheel. That's awesome. But we're on like 3 hamster wheels now. It's hard. Not to say we don't want to do it, but it is like a weird juxtaposition to be in.
I would love to go up to a boomer or Gen Xer, these people who are just always mad because like millennials and Gen Z are tired of working and we're burnt out and we don't want to be on the hamster wheel anymore. And they're like, well, back in my day, you worked for one company and that man yelled at you every day, the man that you worked for, and he was making 4 times as much as you, but you weren't allowed to pee or eat during your workday, but you worked there for 30 years. And every once in a while, they would give you like a couple $100 extra a month. And it's like, but you were miserable too, but you just chose to buy into that system because you too were made to feel like you had to buy into that system.
But they also bought into that system because they were able to have and maintain that job without a degree, and they got paid enough to buy a home and be a one-person like breadwinner to your wife and 5 children, and that was perfectly doable, but that's not doable anymore.
It's not doable now. It's like I wish that I could stay at the same company and do the same thing. I would punch that clock so hard if I could just like make enough to stay alive and keep my partner and mine's life going and pay for things that I kind of enjoy at the same time. There's so much more happening just with inflation alone. Like, I want to buy a house. I also want to buy some bread.
Right. And I think that when they call us resentful or hateful about it, and it's like, well, resentful is a very strong emotion. Would you like to look at the timeline that got me there? I couldn't afford to go to college, and then I graduated college, and I couldn't afford to survive after college while still paying for the college I couldn't afford to go to. And then you kept telling me that recessions end. We'll be on an upswing before we know it. And I've never felt like I've ever been on an upswing when it comes to money.
Yeah, speaking of college, I work for a university and I was looking at the old catalogs from like the 70s. $25 a semester.
If only.
So, like, yeah, of course it was easy for them to get a college degree. Like, we're spending $20,000 a semester now.
Yeah. I used to work for a college until I had a breakdown and I had to be like, I have to do something that I never thought that I would do and quit a job with no means because quarantine ruined me for having to do things that are literally crushing you every day. So I used to work for a college and I'm sure you know about this too, just like the ins and outs and the wheeling and dealing you have to do to like convince kids that this is in fact possible. And it's like, if they have to take 5 different grants, financial aid, and also just like wish upon a star that this is all going to work out for them, then the system is broken. It should not be 10 extra steps to get you to your first day of classes.
Yeah. It's tough and they're so young. Like, they're going into financial aid because they're told they have to go to college, and they're like, well, here are your options for money and loans, and they have no idea what that means because in high school, we're not taught about that.
I still don't know what it means. I still don't have any financial literacy at all.
No, so, like, they're agreeing to these loans without the mindset of, oh, I'm going to have to pay this back. And then it's too late. So we're setting them up for failure at the start.
I'm 34 years old. I've been getting financial aid emails, like my student loan emails, once a month for over 10 years. I looked at one the other day because they're like, just so you know, when Biden starts making you pay these back again, we no longer own your loan. We sold it to someone, because that pisses me off too. Like, why did you get to sell my loan? Can I sell my loan? I don't understand. And I was looking at it, I was like, I still don't understand how to read these emails. Like, I am a person who lives a pretty successful day to day in taking care of herself and her cat and like working a job every day. And I do not understand what this email is. And I know if I call them, they will just confuse me further.
Yep.
And it's purposeful.
Don't get me started on taxes.
Yeah, taxes.
What even does that mean?
What even? My dad was complaining about taxes, and I was like, you know what? If you're this upset about it, just stop paying them. That's my new thought. I was like, I'm going to go full anarchy. Just stop filing.
I mean, if every single person stops paying their taxes, they can't arrest us all.
They can't. And that's how, when they weren't going to extend student loans again, I was like, what if when my student loan email comes in to be like, this is how much you owe this week, I just forward it to President Biden. And I'm like, Joe says he's got me. Just blind copy Joe and just be like, dear President Biden, you told me you got this, and that's how you got my vote. So do it.
I just don't understand why they can't just, like, get rid of it. Like, the money doesn't make sense anymore.
No.
I don't get it. We're trillions of dollars in debt as a country. What's a couple $1 billion in student loans, you know? Just, it's fine. Who are we even paying to?
Who are we even paying to? They've gone without money for what feels like 20 years now. And so they're not hurting. And I refuse to feel guilty about the banks. Like, oh no, the banks aren't doing well.
Oh no.
Oh no. And my new, like, word of my 30s, and to, like, honestly make people understand where we're at as a society and a country, is the word purposeful. So it's like banning drag shows in Tennessee. And I'm like, I go, everyone just wants to think that that's one hateful man making one hateful law, but it's purposeful to all of the hateful senators' agenda. And the agenda is to make us a fascist nation. And if you start thinking in terms of, it was purposeful for them to not give us financial literacy in high school, because if we know how money works, then we're actually empowered to do things with our own money. You spend a lot of days pissed off, but it all starts to make sense, because you also become a conspiracy theorist. But it all just starts to click where you're like, oh, I'm not a failure. I was set up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you've started the podcast and you've started reflecting on your youth and your 30s or your upcoming 30s, are there any instances of what you would think of everyday misogyny that you didn't understand was actually the patriarchy or misogyny playing a role in your upbringing or your life?
I mean, definitely for me, I would say yes. Like, I feel like growing up, I didn't have a great grasp of just how pervasive misogyny was in day-to-day society. I grew up in a family that was very women dominated. There were mostly women in my family, and women who were, just doing the damn thing and doing great stuff. And I didn't think about it like, oh, we can't do things. But I did know some version of it from their things they were telling me in their stories, but it didn't seem real. And then you go through some life and you realize just how real it is. Like, I remember being in college and getting getting into a position, like a job type of position, where I really wanted to be successful. And just like one or two things happened that I immediately was like, I have to be the most raging bitch in the world to have any level of respect from these people, because otherwise it's not going to work. And I just knew that. I had that come in from a couple of experiences that showed me just how much I was not wanted in a certain position because of my gender and my age and my experience. And you just get to see a lot of things happen. Like, I've seen a lot of things professionally. I've been in a lot of leadership roles, and I've been like exposed to very minute levels of misogyny that really build and make you kind of realize what you're up against a little bit more every single day. And I think that that can kind of translate into a lot of people's experiences. Like, you don't really think about it as like something that you're going to face every single day. And while you're going through those 24 hours, you don't necessarily realize it. But then when you take stock, you're like, oh man, this was so much harder than it should have been because of all these things working against just one thing.
Yeah. And I think the tricky thing about our job environments is everything feels so isolated. So if a man takes an opportunity to like block you out of a conversation, or in a former job I was at, I was told to say no to opportunities because my boss was insecure that I was doing too good of a job or getting too much credit in a company I was working for. And it feels so isolated and personal. And that's one of the things about misogyny that gets so tricky. If everything feels very isolated and very personal, you automatically feel like, so clearly that's only happening to me, right? And then you start talking to other women or people of color or people of different gender identities in your own office space. And you're like, oh, no, that happened to you too. So I guess we would classify that as a microaggression against us. But they also make us feel very afraid of those terms.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that I noticed, like in that position that I was talking about a minute ago, like there were a few different women who were in some of these roles, but we were all handling it so differently. And it was like we were facing the same exact levels of oppression or misogyny or like those microaggressions, but we were all just trying to get through with it. And we handled it so differently. And I'm not saying that anybody was handling it right or wrong. It's like we're all just trying because it does feel so individual. Like they're like, well, maybe if I handle it this way, it'll get better. Maybe if I handle it this way, it'll get better. And I don't know if it got better for any of us because I don't think because it wasn't our problem. It wasn't something that we were doing or not doing. It was this system that we were in. And looking back on it now, like at the time, I was just trying to get through it. And I'm sure at the time I was probably looking at those other women and facing them with a lot of horizontal hostility of like, you're doing this wrong. You're not doing the right thing to get their respect. You're handling this wrong. Now, looking back, I hate that I ever thought things like that, but we were like pitted against each other in a lot of ways. And also, you don't realize how toxic it is until you're not in those situations and until you can see how those situations are kind of everywhere, no matter what you're doing. And that's when it becomes a bigger concept like misogyny or oppression or sexism. Like, it doesn't feel like that when you're in it. Like you said, it's so individual.
One of the biggest tools of misogyny and racism and all of it is we've been constantly fed the story that it's over, we've fixed it, and it no longer happens. We were watching a collaborator and I are we're watching the third season of One Tree Hill for this show that we do about our comfort shows. And there was an episode where old man Whitey, the basketball coach, takes him to a really rundown gymnasium and he's like, you're not worth our nice gymnasium. you will fix this gymnasium up and we will play here until you all can get your acts together. And then he tells this like story that he thinks is very inspirational and beautiful about how when he was playing basketball was segregated. And one time they had to play basketball against the all African American team from the all African American school. And they met at this broken gym to do it. And eventually the white players and the black players started playing with one another on the same team. And I was like, and once again, sports have fixed racism. That is the like lesson that millennials have been taught the most through media, whether it be Remember the Titans, One Tree Hill, or like anything else. It's like, thank God that sports fixed racism, and now we don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I love Remember the Titans. I do.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
It's a great
I love
movie.
it. But I've also, like, I watch it now, and I'm like, guys, it's not, I still love this movie, but come on, Denzel. It's not fixed.
No, but they really did. They tried their best to fix it. Through one basketball game, a town was healed. And it very much I've had my father look over my shoulder, and this was years ago, before I would even consider myself a feminist, an activist, anything. I was probably at most just a shitty, pissed off woman. And I was reading some BuzzFeed article, and it was like a collection of stories about women who had experienced oppression. And my dad looked over my shoulder and he's like, why would you even be reading about something that doesn't happen anymore? And I didn't have and then he was like, and if it does happen, then just be happy you live in America.
Oh no. Oh no.
And it's like,
entitled white man. No.
Right. I love when entitled white men try to tell me, like, there are no problems here. Why are you complaining?
Yeah, not for you, Brad.
And I didn't have the, like, language, and it was also not on depression meds yet to, like, try. I was like, I don't even know how to begin this fight. So I am just going to go lock myself into a room that is not a public viewing room in this house, and I will just read this article in peace and be pissed off for the rest of my day. But it's gotten to the point where I can't even fault my dad for feeling that way anymore, because I'm like, well, that technically is the story that he's being fed to, and it's a story that he thrives under, so why would he believe anything else? Like, it's hard to believe that his daughter would, like, experience misogyny every day. Him and his bros, when I explain what my show is about, they just look at me and they're like, what? Is that like a thing? What do you mean by everyday misogyny? And I go, I mean small daily things that happen that we do not understand fall under the misogyny umbrella. That is what I am talking about. And they're like, huh, well, we really thought that we fixed that when we all gave you the right to have birth control, abortions, and jobs. And it's like, well, you're starting to take those back. So...
So the everyday misogyny over the years has added up to some really big stuff. And that's the whole point.
And again, I feel like the kid off of The Sixth Sense, where I'm like, I see misogynists. They're everywhere.
I'm sorry. That's the best thing I think I've ever heard.
I might make it a t-shirt. I see misogynist. And it's just me making the Haley Joel Osment face. Just be like, they're everywhere.
Bruce Willis is somewhere with you. Like, yeah, they're there.
Yeah, they're there.
I believe you.
Bruce Willis knows. You know he knows. It's just one of those things where I'm real fun at parties because I love telling, like, women, like, well, that's misogyny making you feel that way. And it's like, oh, here I am at drag brunch making you feel like hold up a mirror to your own impression. How fun. But if we don't start talking about these everyday, like, experiences of misogyny, well, then we wake up in a state where I'm not allowed to go to drag brunch anymore. Like, they're starting to affect our entertainment, our bodies, our I'm surprised that we don't need passports to go from state to state anymore as women. Because what if I wanted to cross state lines to get an abortion or cheaper birth control or weed or any of it?
Yeah, it has an impact, and I think as millennials specifically, this is something I was thinking about the other day. Like growing up, I feel like we had so many very like not minor, like they made an impact, but things that seemed like everyday misogyny and things that were very much like misogyny, women against other women that we got kind of fed. Like so many of our like comfort shows and movies and our iconic movies were like the most pick me energy. They ran off pick me energy. Like, the different kinds of women, and I'm not like other girls, and that stuff seems funny and like ridiculous now, but I do think it affected our mindset. We're just now starting to get into this concept of like that's not cool. Why are we pitting other women against each other? And I think it's just one example of something that was very popular in pop culture and pervasive in pop culture that was like a microaggression or like something that affected our perspective when it came to women and how to be a woman and how to be quote unquote the right kind of woman. And I think it made an impact. Like now I'm glad that we're going against it, but I know I was guilty of it as a middle schooler and a high schooler. I was like, I'm not like other girls, I like 3 days grace. And
I was like, oh, I'm just the ugly fat friend.
Yeah.
No one's going to like me.
Exactly. There were so many things, so many tropes that just like burrowed their way into our vernacular and our self-worth. And yeah, now we're 30 and we're getting out of it, but it's taken, like, we found ourselves when we were in our late 20s, whatever you want to call it. But we also had to get out of this place of like, I'm this kind of person, I'm that kind of person. And I think that's an example that really goes along with some of the things we talk about on our show of everyday kind of misogyny that we really got bombarded with as millennial women growing up.
I used to treat every day of my 20s like I was on The Bachelor trying to get the first impression rose. Like, it's the epitome of pick me, like, attitude where it's like, no, it's me. I'm the great one. Give me my trinket so I can live.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was like stuff like that. It was like everything you did was like for to get a certain kind of attention from a man, and then we like the mean girls trope and like, well, they're the bad ones, they're ruining it for everyone, and it's like, no.
It had me posted on my social media saying, I'm not like other girls. I play Call of Duty. I did not play Call of Duty.
No.
Absolutely not.
No. I was like an emo kid. Like, it was like, well, I'm wearing this t-shirt that has your favorite band on it, and she doesn't even know who they are. Like,
Name 3 songs.
Yeah, I'm special. And now I'm like, I wish I could just go back and like punch myself in the face a little bit for that kind of stuff. But it was everywhere. It was so much of what we did, and it's taken like an active effort for us to like shake that. I feel like at this age, at least for like me, like you get to see a lot of things. And I was a gender studies minor in college, so I got a lot of like the book stuff. But it's funny when you get the book stuff and then you see it happen in real life and you see how you've done stuff, like, then you're like, oh no, I gotta change my whole thing, which is good. I mean, it's good, but it's definitely been a ride.
It's definitely been a ride is also my tagline for the last like 6 years.
Mine's like the last like 28.
I need to get off this ride.
Yeah.
Please take me off.
How's it been going, Natalie? I don't know. I've grabbed the like puke bag 3 times. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah, I keep pulling like the panic thing and nobody's letting me off the
emergency
ride.
stop.
Yeah, nobody's coming to get me.
Well, I am so excited that you both have entered the podcasting community and that you're talking about these things and you're like revisiting. I was listening to your therapy episode this morning while I was getting ready, and I love that you guys take a moment to like go back through what your social media looked like. I think this episode, it was 2011, and I was like, oh shit, that's when I graduated high school. Who knows what dumb shit I was saying just so I could get invited to prom.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to prom.
I did.
I did. It's not worth it.
No. I was so like, I remember I went, because we had like a junior and a senior prom, And I was going to my junior prom only because I had a boyfriend. And I was like, finally, I've made it. I've done it. And then we broke up, like, 3 weeks before prom. And I was like, this is... But then I went with my best friend, and we had a great time. And then the next prom, I just asked the dude. I was like, you want to go to prom with me? And he sputtered for a second and said yes. And it was fun. Was it worth all the money and all the stress and all the, like, I'm a failure because I don't have a boyfriend anymore? No. Go get a pizza. It's better.
I went to the movies instead.
I feel like
I saw the new Nightmare on Elm Street.
I would much rather have done that.
I love popcorn.
I miss popcorn so much.
Because of the crones.
The crones.
Oh, I'm sorry to bring it up.
No, it's fine.
We bring it up all the time.
We have a popcorn maker at home because my husband loves popcorn. I have to make it for him because I have 7 years of popcorn making experience from the movie theater. So he was like, you make it so well. Can you please make it for me? I was like, I guess.
We knew what we were doing.
I'll smell it.
But I'm so glad that 30, Dirty, and Dying is a show, and it's just giving like the real millennial experience. And on to all the men I've tolerated before, we end each show with 2 traditions. I've been calling it like the needle point on the pillow lesson. Like if I was going to have a lesson hanging on my door so that people knew like, this is what I want you to take away from life and living under everyday misogyny, here it would be. So we offer a lesson to the audience, like, if you remember one thing, remember this, like we're Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. And then we offer up a good time manifestation, like, this is where we're at, but this is where we hope we're going. So if either of you, or if both of you, have a little lesson that you've taken away from 30, Dirty, and Dying, please share it with the listeners.
It doesn't get better. No, I'm just kidding.
It's nothing.
It doesn't get better.
You wake up 30 and everything hurts and you don't know why.
Your body just aches all the time. No, you're not stuck in what you thought you knew, and you can still like keep going and growing and figuring yourself out. That you're not stuck in one place.
Yeah. I think for mine, I think it actually would be, like, it doesn't always get better. But I have a good...
But it's okay.
I have a good spin on that, though, I swear. It will get worse. Life will get worse. Like, and I mean, I think it's a good thing to recognize that, because I think especially when we're, like, in our early 20s and even our mid-20s, when life is starting to, like, seem very permanent, it feels like we're in a catastrophe. Like, it could never be worse than this. And then you get a little older and you've gone through some things and it's like, no, I've definitely been through worse than that. And those catastrophes seem like blips on the timeline. So I think what I would say is that the older you get and the more into this stage of life you get, you're going to recognize your own resilience and you're going to grow that resilience. And this might seem like the worst thing ever, but things will probably get worse, and this is not as bad as it seems. And even if it is, you've lived through worse things. You'll live through worse things. You can get through this. You are a resilient person, and you're here for a reason. And, keep going.
And therapy is okay.
Yeah. If you need help to keep going, get it.
I'm going to end this episode with the lesson that I like to tell people who are almost going to get married. And I'm going to be like, permanency is a lie, and forever is a very long time. So if you're sitting in the mindset where it's like, this will last forever, this will hurt forever. No, that's a concept we made up. Like money. It's all made up. It's all just gigabytes on the phone at this point, and things that we can't get out of the cloud.
Yeah, nothing lasts forever. I mean, that seems sad sometimes, but it also is kind of comforting. Like, nothing lasts forever, and life can always be changing and will be changing, and you can handle it. You might need help, you might need some assistance, you might need some different support, but you can handle it, and nothing will last forever. I like that.
This week at trivia, I quoted The Outsiders, and I was like, nothing stays gold, pony boy. And my friend reminded me that book ends, in fact, in a murder that then gets just like covered up by white men. And she's like, why did that boy get murdered and no one go to jail for it? I was like, why? I read that book 20 years ago. I don't know.
I think I quoted that at the end of our episode about grief.
Yeah.
I feel like I said stay golden, pony boys, or something.
And I just stared at you. I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
Nothing stays golden. Pony boy, or whatever it says. Whatever Patrick
I don't know,
Swayze.
something like that. Definitely Pony Boy is right.
Yeah, whatever Patrick Swayze said in the moment to make them feel better about killing their friend. What would be your hope for people as they move forward being millennials living in the state that we're living?
I hope you're all right. Because
we're not.
I think for us it was like part of the reason we're doing the show, right, is to hope and spread this idea of people not being so down on themselves and wherever they are in their millennial 30-ish experience, and to just kind of give yourself a little bit more grace, be kinder to yourself, and know that you're not alone. Like, a lot of us feel this way. A lot of us have felt this way, and it's not to say that like we're always going to be in a slump or we're always going to hate ourselves or our lives or whatever. It's just embrace both sides of your experience. Like, you might be having some of the best days of your life, and you might be having some of the worst days of your life, and you could have several of those in 1 week. And that's just kind of like what life is. And embrace the entirety of the experience and know that you're not by yourself. And if nothing else, Clarissa and Kourtney from 30 Dirty and Dying are with you, and we'll be with you every Thursday. So I guess that, just like embrace it all and try to be kind to yourself as you're going through this experience.
I think, same. Are you just co-signing on it? I love that. I also like to end the episode by just being like, I also co-sign on that. But I think I'm hoping that all of the private ways that we support ourselves and each other become like publicly funded ways. Like, wouldn't that be something if mental health was something that we valued in our country and under the reign of capitalism? And I would like to manifest that all of our student loan debt just gets wiped out. That's what I'm choosing to manifest today.
That's a good manifestation.
Those are good.
Right
I'll
there.
take it.
Yeah, I don't want to have to choose between my physical health and my mental health, because that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, it's like literally making a budget, and we're like, okay, so can we afford to start therapy again this month, or no?
The answer is no.
No. When we did that the therapy episode, we did a poll that was like, what would have been some of your reservations? Like 80% of people were like, I can't afford it. That I hate that. I wish I could fix that myself. I can't fix it for me. But I hate it. So I like your manifestation a lot.
Thank you. More, or we just wipe out money altogether and go back to bartering, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even think I would be smart enough to understand how bartering works, but maybe we could try it. Because
I mean, I could pick up pottery, maybe. It wouldn't be good.
I love pottery. I love putting my hand in mud.
I mean, I love to do that.
I bet my hands wouldn't be so dry if I did that.
Ooh.
Mud facials? Mud facials?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Should
we start pottery?
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe.
What a great sensory activity. Make sure to plug your show, and thank you one more time for being guest today and being willing to spend part of your Sunday with me. Make sure that all of the listeners know where they can find you.
You can find our 30 Dirty and Dying TikTok. It's 30 Dirty Dying and Dying.
Dirty and Dying spelled out, yeah.
Yeah. Our Instagram is
the same.
30 Dirty and Dying. My Instagram is at Kourtney Ray 91.
Yes, that is your Instagram.
Okay.
I know it. She does. But yeah, you can find us on TikTok and Instagram, like Kourtney said, 30 Dirty and Dying, all spelled out. My Instagram is, and TikTok is, some variation of Clarissa Explains Nothing. There will be maybe some underscores in there for one of the platforms, but you'll find us. We're tagged on all our stuff. So that's where you can find us individually. We post new episodes. We're in season 3 right now.
We just started it.
Yeah, while we're recording, and then I think by the time this comes out, we'll be pretty far in. So, we come out every Thursday. We're on most major podcast platforms, and we love new listeners. We love reviews and ratings and all that fun stuff. So please,
give us a listen, give us a rate, and tell us what you'd like to see from us.
Yeah, come check us out. And we have stuff going on individually, and we talk about that stuff on the podcast as well. So it's the best way probably to keep up with us together and as individuals is just give us a listen.
All right, tolerators, you know the drill. There's a little commercial sometime during the episode that tells you all of our socials, but make sure that you're on the Instagram, the Patreon, the YouTube, and all of it, because if you're not there supporting me, the misogynist and white supremacists are leaving me mean comments. Okay, so I don't want to guilt you into anything, but just keep that in mind. That's what's happening if you're not the people who are leaving comments. And remember, out there, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including media about your 20s that made you feel like your 30s were going to be easy, when in actuality, it just gets to be more expensive to live here. Smiles are for joy.